morning or good afternoon, everybody. Good evening here in Europe. This is the Wizards of Ox Live, and we are here to talk kids, kiddos, food issues, and everything around going low oxalate with our little ones. So welcome, everybody. And I'm Patricia De La Garza. My daughter started when she was 5 years old in the second study group from Susan Owens. So we've been here quite a while, and now she's 23. And I have with me my beautiful co-wizards, Monique and Karla, and they'll introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I'll dive in. We started when my youngest was not 3 yet, but even though she was very young, she might have been a little bit strong-willed like her mother. And so we did have some fun with starting to get food handled and what she could and couldn't have. And also, I'm going to say, navigating social situations as a child with a special diet. So we started when my youngest was about 4 months from 3 years old, but my oldest was 8. And so we started pretty young here too. And now I have a 16-year-old and I have a coming up to 22-year-old son. So.
And our beautiful Karla.
We started when my son was 4, and he was remarkably easy to transition, not only to gluten casein free, but also low oxalate. He is, and always has been, a very adventurous eater. Likes vegetables, is interested in trying new things. So we were remarkably blessed.
Yes.
to have a kid that was willing to try just about anything. And he's now almost 19.
Perfect. And just before we say anything else, please remember that we are sharing our experiences. This is not a medical consult. If you decide to try some of the things that we're doing, we are hoping you're doing it together with some sort of a healthcare professional. If you need a consult, here our beautiful Monique does consults. Karla, as soon as she finishes her study, she will be doing that as well. And I do some consults, but more on the behavioral side. And that's where we're going to get started, which is what is food, what should it be, what it shouldn't be. And one of the things I tell all of my families is that food is something that should be neutral or nice. It's not a punishment and it's not a reward, because what happens is that we might be giving a ton of wrong messages just by bribing kids. When we say to kids, you eat that broccoli up and then you'll have some ice cream, we're not telling them that if they're brave and try something new, they're going to get rewarded. We're telling them broccoli is really terrible, so terrible. The mom is willing to bribe me with it. And that doesn't make for very good eating habits. The other thing that is really important is that the time at the table should be a social time, not a suffering time, not an anguish time, not something where you're going, oh my God, it's already lunch again. What am I going to do? And I work with a lot of kids that are on the autism spectrum, and the amount of moms and dads that I've met that do not eat with their kids and becomes this torture session where both of them are hovering over this child sitting in a high chair, probably tied to the chair, trying to force some food in it. It's not the best way to get really interesting curiosity developed, or new foods or things like that. And the last thing, and then I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to let the other wizards talk, is that you have to remember also that if kids are picky today, it's because probably food has not been an enjoyable experience up until now. If they are swelling up, if they have trouble with constipation or diarrhea, if they feel bloated or have brain fog, it's not something that they're going to be looking forward to. And even though we're going to be helping changing these items into a more gut repairing diet that will allow them to have more variety and all of these things, it's really important to realize that these changes are going to happen on your kids' terms, not on yours. So this is not something that, and look at my beautiful daughter, she just brought me from the garden. Gracias, cariño. So it's, I'm talking. So we're going to be learning about a lot of the tips and tricks that we've used. Some of them are extremely helpful. Some of them you might not find them very helpful. And this is what this forum is for. Some things work for some kids, some things don't work for other kids. And some kids are only looking for texture. For some of them, the taste is very important. For some of them, something that reminds them of something that made them feel bad is enough to have them rejected immediately. And also there are things that if you have reactions or intolerances to a certain group of foods, it's possible that foods in the same family, you're also going to be reacting. So we're going to be talking about a little bit of all those things, but just let's just think that food is wonderful. It's nutrition. It's a moment to share with the family, and it should not become a struggle. So I'm quiet. I just set the forum there. So you two hit it off.
I would add that for my son, at least initially, it was sensory. You know, he had problems with certain textures. He had problems with smell. And in our case, we had to do feeding therapy to get him past that. You know, the taste of food wasn't, I mean, I could throw anything into a blender and he would eat it. But if it was even slightly crunchy initially, it wasn't going to happen. And so we had to do a little bit of feeding therapy to get him through that. You know, once we got past that point, you know, all bets were off. The kid would basically eat just about anything. But that's something to, you know, to keep in mind, that it may be, especially for kids on the spectrum, it may be sensory related as well as, you know, food intolerances, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, keep an open mind as to, you know, why some foods are being rejected.
Exactly. And it might be different. I have, I know a little girl that nothing crunchy would go. And actually, we went past it with a very, very simple trick, which was we gave mom some crunchy apples and some sticks of celery. At the time, I didn't know about oxalates at the beginning, but it was a stick of celery, and mom would chew it and he would listen to her chewing. And once they started saying, oh, okay, she has that as well, so it should be okay. And he started trying it out. So many times, let's just not think that there is just this one solution to these things, because a lot of things could be playing into this food arena.
And that's a great segue to what we did here, which was the adults had to model the behavior. So, you know, another thing to keep in mind is if you're encouraging your child to eat a food that you won't touch, that's probably not going to fly. So, we actually made a bit of a game of this. We had a 1 bite rule, and the 1 bite rule meant one piece of the food went on your plate. And I didn't care if you sliced off the smallest bit with your teeth, but you had to have one taste. And I started off that rule with modeling on foods that I didn't like. I mean, we didn't eat a lot of them, but we ate some Brussels sprouts. And my kids liked them and I hated them. So we had gone through a time period where I would make a few Brussels sprouts for everybody and I would just sit it out. So we started the one bite rule with mom having to have things that she didn't like. I made all kinds of faces. It was lots of fun. And ironically, I like Brussels sprouts now. So sometimes it's also that you have to try something enough times. We don't realize what a difference that makes. And I was fortunate enough with my youngest, who had more issues with trying food than her brother had. I read that a food needs to be tried with a child up to like 10 times or more before they might fully accept it. And there might be a whole gradation of steps before you get that first real bite of something. And so I was fully prepared to keep offering things, to have everybody live by the one bite rule. It was particularly good when I made my husband have sauerkraut. That one really went over with the kids because he really hates sauerkraut. But when they saw the adults modeling the behavior, like if the food was on the table, everybody was going to have at least one bite of everything. We did take some breaks from things like that, where we would have things on the table in separate dishes that were all things you could eat with your fingers. We found that to be another thing that was really helpful. If kids could put their own stuff on their plate and pick the things they liked and then be able to eat things with their fingers, we called this a picky plate. That seemed to also help them get more adventurous because they were allowed to just sit and eat. Watermelon and red pepper strips were two of my kids' favorite things. If that was on the table, my daughter would fill her whole plate with that, and maybe add some cheese. So I would let her get away with a meal like that, even though it was not as beautifully balanced as you might like, but it was low oxalate. She was getting nutrients. So, giving your kids some feeling of autonomy over their diet can really help as well.
One of the things that I've brought up before that really worked for my son, buy in. And when he was old enough to understand, recipes, mom might cook this. So, I told him, pick out some recipes and I'll attempt to make them gluten and casein free as well as low oxalate. And that was really key for him because every couple of weeks he would come up with some recipes. Can you try this? Can you try that? Mom, can you make me dairy-free goldfish crackers that are gluten-free? I figured out how to do it. I didn't particularly care for the taste of them, but he was all on board. So, stuff like that.
My son did the same thing. He was a little older and he had certain foods he really liked. So one of the requests from him as we started into this diet at age 8 was, I really like some of our food, Mama. Can you find a way to make it low oxalate? And so I committed to take our family recipes that we loved and make sure that they were low oxalate. Now, he did ask me to come up with a low oxalate croissant, and I've still got my meals dug in all these years later because it's just so much work. But by and large, cakes, cookies, soup recipes, all sorts of things that my family really liked. And in fact, one of their favorite things was a very simple dish that my husband introduced us to, which was called stump pot, basically stamp pot. And you just mash vegetables kind of together after they've been cooked. And you add bacon, so bacon makes everything better, at least for some people. Anyway, so I found a way to take a high oxalate version of that dish, which was, comfort food. It was soft, it was creamy, there wasn't hard textures there. It used potatoes, carrots, onion, in its sort of simplest form. And it's amazing what you can do with half previously peeled and boiled potatoes with cauliflower, and then half previously boiled and peeled carrots with something like butternut squash. We ended up with this lovely, easy, and carbs for the kids, which they needed, which I didn't, but this really easy dish that we could have on the side as a meal. And, I didn't have to worry they weren't getting enough nutrition with something like that.
We're going to also make food fun.
Oh, yeah.
And still make it nutritious. One of the things that we were talking about earlier was, with Ian, if it was in a pancake or a cookie, he would be more than willing to try it. So we did savory cookies, with some ground or canned chicken, ground beef, throw in some mashed vegetables, even a little bit of baby food, throw in a little bit of garlic and onion powder. If you have cheese, throw that in. And, that was his breakfast cookie. Or we could do lentils or black-eyed peas. We actually made chocolate cookies or chocolate brownies with black-eyed peas. At the time, it was a little bit of cocoa powder, but now they have Maya nut powder, which is a lot lower oxalate and actually tastes quite a bit like chocolate. And so you can make brownies, cookies. The kid just, went nuts over that. And my husband, who has an issue with chocolate, I was like, try this. And he had no idea that there was black-eyed peas or lentils, perhaps a little butternut squash. It was just a cookie.
Yeah, I think that play bit is so important. When my kids were little, we actually made smoothies for the Teletubbies. So we had Po with, cherries and yogurt, and then we had Tinky Winky or whatever his name was. And, we just had them, like we had a red one, we had a green one, we had a blue one, we had, all these things. And then we just asked for a to-be pudding. That's what they would call it. And so it was fun. It was really light. It was fun, and they were part of it. And that is going to take us a little bit to the, segue to the next topic of conversation, which is the presentation and making it fun. I posted on my own Facebook page, which is Bienestar y Autismo in Spanish. I just posted a comic that was this mom going to the kid, and he's saying, "Come on, stop playing. Let's go take a bath." And this kid going, and not moving. And then in the second little square, then there's his mom approaching this kid saying, "Guess what? We get to play with water." And, same situation, two completely different messages. So when we have kids or when we have picky eaters, nothing beats a good attitude. So it's something that is really important for the kids, so that they don't see it, like I said, like a punishment or something terrible is going to happen on at the meal table, and it becomes something that is nice. And we have some images that we put on the invitation, some images and some of the ideas that we've had some of the things that we do just with presentation of food. And if you're looking for inspiration, Pinterest and and YouTube, and just Google, just say plate designs for kids or presenting food for kids or things like that, and you're going to get a plethora of images and things like that that are really easy to imitate. One of our favorites was the watermelon cake, which was literally, I just carved out, a cylinder out of a watermelon, and I just pricked it with like a pineapple and papaya and different things like that. And we just made these beautiful designs, just pricking things on this watermelon. And kids thought it was a hoot. Kids thought it was really fun. It was really fresh. It was, it was something that they could have, at their party and blow it, and everybody, the kids would come out and say, oh wow, that cake was wild. And that's the other point that we're going to be talking about, which is the social aspect of eating different.
Yeah. I want to jump in here because my daughter was notorious for getting into situations where other kids would comment on her food and she wouldn't eat it. So even favorite foods, we had a chicken, red lentil, and white rice soup, which was mildly curried, and I'd played with the spices so that they were not high oxalate. And I would put it in a thermos and she would take it to school and her friends would go, ew, what's that? And she would bring it home and eat it after the school day was over at the kitchen table. So to her credit, she never abandoned the food completely. And when she told me she was having really difficult times with her friends, we tried to do something different, but it was really quite the thing. So your child may be going to school with food critics, and that may be another challenge that you have to kind of get around. So we went to what we call a picky plate, and we actually got a bento box container so we could do different layers. So it looked kind of neat. So her friends were not like have an attitude about it. And we would use, it's going to depend on what your child or yourself can handle, but we use cheese sticks and red pepper sticks and cucumber sticks and kind of laid them out in little divisions in this bento box style container. And the bottom layer would be, maybe a little packet of raisins or raisins plus pumpkin seeds, and then a rice cake or something. And maybe we did do pickle spears with meat wrapped around them. So things like that seem to do okay. But yeah, we do have to keep in mind that sometimes our kids may be dealing with some interesting issues in terms of the social environment that they're in. And so being able to help with things that look right. So my daughter loved it when we got into doing more muffins and things were buried in the muffins. So the same thing that Karla was talking about with cookies, we did with muffins. Never should have told my daughter about that cricket powder. She really liked those until she knew what was in them.
Yeah, well, muffins and cookies, and yeah, for me it was pancakes. Pancakes would go with all sorts of things. Yeah. Leftover greens, chicken, rice, whatever it was that was lying around, mix it with an egg and make a pancake out of it. So those are really simple things. On the social bit, sometimes we really have to keep those communication channels open, because they might not be telling us what's happening. And they might be, well, mine was famous for trading her beautiful low oxalate, 100% organic stuff and trade it for some, Belgian chocolate covered waffle crap. And you know, and it was like when I started seeing all those wrappings coming back, it was like, ooh. And then I would go to school, and then the kids would come and say, oh, what is she bringing for lunch tomorrow? It's like, it's not for you. No, it's like, so you have to keep those communications channels open to know what's happening, you know, to prepare a little bit extra for somebody else, or make, you know, something that they can share or things like that. That's always working. I always also kept muffins and things like that in the school's freezer. So if there was a birthday party, there was a special celebration, somebody brought crepes because it was something or other, my kid knew she could go to the kitchen, get something out of the freezer, and have her own treat. So, you know, it's also kind of like preparing yourselves with before the situation happens makes it a lot easier for them.
I actually want to jump in on that, because we had a trade-in policy at home. This was a fun one. I don't know where I came up with this, but you know, chocolate and treats with chocolate in them was one of those things that my kids could fall for. And so one point my youngest came home. She had a really bad reaction to eating some chocolate goodie. And I said, sweetie, anytime they offer you a chocolate goodie, if you bring that home, you can trade it in for any white chocolate thing you want. So we started to have a cache of things at home that were low oxalate and which my kids could tolerate. And so at one point it was caramel, at another point it was white chocolate chips in muffins. It was all kinds of different things, but we started to have a constant stash of things, and those things were only for trade-ins. And so if they got something elsewhere that wasn't good for them, the trade-in jar was really attractive at home, and so they would bring it home to me and then they would trade it in. So that really helped with things like Halloween too, because they wanted to go out at Halloween, they wanted to go out with their friends, and I said, whatever you get that you can't eat, you just bring it home and I will replace it. So that was one of the things that we used for that problem.
We did something similar,
We did
and
too.
the same with the school. We always had snacks that he could have. The school was really very good about letting us know we have 3 birthday parties this month.
Mhm.
And they knew that he was on a restricted diet. So I would say, you know, no problem. I'll send him in with, you know, with cupcakes or muffins or, you know, something that he could have. And we would talk about it beforehand. You know, what would you like? Well, you know, can I have this? Okay. Or, you know, just send me in with extra pancakes. And he was good with that. And like I said, the school was really good about, you know, letting me know we need to restock his snack supply. You know, anything particular, like if they had, like for Thanksgiving, you know, they would have a special meal for the kids in class. You know, they would do their own little potluck. You know, same with, you know, prior to Easter and prior to Christmas, they would have these different meals. And they would always let me know beforehand, you know, what can we have? And I would ask them, you know, what do you need? And then I would make enough for the entire class, and it would be something that he could have.
Exactly. And sometimes those trade-ins don't even have to be food, because sometimes my kids said, okay, that's okay, but can I have that multicolor pencil? Yes, you may.
Yes.
Can you have, you know, those funny looking erasers? Yes, of course. And how about those stamping markers and things like that? You know, it's like, yeah. So sometimes we just have to think outside the box, but those trade-ins work absolutely. And okay, got a little quiet. And on text.
And no questions, although somebody said love the trade-in idea.
Mm. So if we want to, you have to remember also that little bodies have little calorie intake, and so they have little permission to eat oxalate. So, a lot of the numbers that we're talking about a 60-kilo person. When we're talking a low oxalate diet is so many milligrams and blah, 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 we're talking about adults. So if you're talking about a 3-year-old that's eating maybe 1,000 calories, it's less oxalate. So you have to remember that. And you also have to remember that it has to go down slowly, and it has to come down with support. And a lot of these kids, or at least the kids that I'm more in contact with, the kids on the spectrum, many times they don't have the words to explain what is happening. So we're going to have to be really, really observant about what's happening. So, any rubbing of private parts or any, potty accidents and things like that, we have to really follow them up. And we have to really see if there's no inflammation, there's no pain, there's nothing that is really, bothering them. Same with their skin. If they start, to do funny things, they'll probably have floaters in their eyes. So let's just remember that we're talking about little human beings.
Yeah, who can't always report accurately. Although my youngest did tell me at one point that she had a bee in her belly. And that was probably a really good description of the kind of pain that she had in her gut. So when people, are looking for how to understand what their child is saying, in some cases, you're going to have to listen to the words they can use and then go from there. So yeah, my 4-year-old had some unpleasant times for sure when she was talking about having a bee in her belly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that said, food is fun. And if we give our kids options, if we get them involved, I think we've all talked a little bit about this, but we had a garden in the backyard. And once we'd been doing this diet for a couple of years, I only had low oxalate varieties of things out in the garden. And so one of the things I do is send my kids out to pick whatever was ready. And so they'd have all sorts of fun going out in the garden and finding things. And then we would put that together as a meal. So it meant that I had to be able to kind of work with food on the fly, but it's amazing how much fun they would have when they came in and said, well, Mama, we have a zucchini and we have radishes and we have a red pepper. And I'd say, well, that sounds like a stir fry, and away we'd go. So giving them a chance to be more involved. I think we've all alluded to this, but the more involved they are in their diet, not only do they learn better what's going on, but they also have like a personal investment in it.
Shopping. I used to take Ian with me all the time to do grocery shopping, so he could look at the vegetables, look at the different fruits, and we would explain, which ones he could have, which ones he couldn't. The whys, we had, some fun with it. He would, knock on the melons and we would go through. I got him into food prep. So he wasn't necessarily, real good with a chef's knife, but, they actually have things that the kids can use to cook. So, a chef knife that, is considerably duller, but, you can have them, chopping up zucchini or cucumber, with that. He's not going to be able to tackle anything, considerably thicker without having vegetables and fruits fly all over the place. But, we got him involved in food prep. And then as he got a little bit older, we got him involved in cooking. He's not a real big fan of the oven because he had accidentally burned himself at school. Thank God it wasn't bad, but it was enough to stick in his mind, but he was okay with a crock pot. So, early on it was, toss some chicken pieces in there, a little bit of turnip, a little bit of zucchini, okay, a little tiny bit of carrot, a little tiny bit of potato, and put a little stock in there and turn the crock pot on. And he was cool with that. And, now he makes, pretty much makes his own meals. And he's been, doing that for a number of years now. He's not only cooking for himself, a couple times I'm making him cook for the rest of us, just to get him into, into the habit. And it does bring on ownership. Very early on, the teachers would laugh because they would offer him, go ahead and have some fruit. And he would say, you need to call my mom and ask if I can have those blackberries. Or, they would offer him a cookie and he would say, is it gluten-free? Do you have any dairy in it? Ooh, can't have chocolate. So, he got to the point to where he was his own advocate. And that's essentially what you want to have happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because you have to fledge them as an adult who can say that I can have, that I can't have, and understand their own bodies. And also, I think you made a great point, Karla, when you were talking about a little bit of carrot and a little bit of potato. My kids ate Brussels sprouts because while there's some oxalate in Brussels sprouts, they're low histamine, they kind of worked for us. So I would take my kids shopping, and we stopped an entire grocery store once when my kids came racing at me from the other side of the produce section going, Mama, Brussels sprouts are on sale. The entire place just stopped and was looking for the kids who liked Brussels sprouts. So, but the fact that they got involved in shopping, they'd actually go up and down the aisles and they were looking for those little sale signs if it was something that we could eat. And that meant that they were getting inspired in terms of shopping. And hey, that's a good skill over the long haul too.
Absolutely. I just want to touch real quick, and then we'll just go to the recipes that Karla has for us. But I just want to touch real quick on something that helped us on the bullying, because like Monique said, it's, you might get some kids that are in not such a good place looking for the difference that is going to make kids feel bad. It's not because they are inherently bad, it's because they're probably suffering themselves. I think hurt people. And so we just have to, keep that in mind. And with our kids eating different things, saying unpopular things like, I can't eat chocolate. And, is that gluten-free? That can be a trigger to some kids to try to put ours in a position of a victim. And one of the things that really helped us is a website that is, I'm going to put it in the comments. It's a website that's called Bullies to Buddies. So it's bullies and then the number 2 buddies.com. And it has like a golden rule type of philosophy behind it. And it's, you don't do to others what you don't want done to you type of thing. But what's really interesting is that it shows kids that they have the power, to stand on their own, to value if they are ever at risk and contact an adult. And you have like these different scenarios that you can, talk to your kids about or prevent, in the school environment. And you show these materials to the school in case for example, your kid's nonverbal. and just show, these materials and say, okay, I would love to support these kinds of programs to make sure that my kid is not in the victim, state. And when we empower them, it's a lot easier for them to stand their ground. And if they feel that they're doing it out of conviction, it's very different than doing out of prohibition. So if you see, for example, a kid that has a vegetarian family, and he knows that he doesn't want to eat Bambi, or he doesn't want to do this or that, when a bully comes and says, oh, get a burger, whatever, his grounding is so strong from his family background and the reasons why he's decided, or the family has decided, to go on a particular diet. That's the kind of strength you want to do with a lower oxalate diet. So you want to give your kids enough information that they can stand their ground and say, well, you don't know that, but spinach is not good because it has oxalate that actually kills bugs, and it could be this and that. And historically, it wasn't like that. And depending on, the environment and the situation and whatever, it can help, just ground the kids in the why of the choices. And then you change them from somebody who's taken a decision towards their own well-being, instead of following my mom's doing that is really bothersome. So this is also another bit, of that, how you present it is very different, and it can be very effective. So we can have discussions in the group if you want, and see, how we could handle these things. If not all of you know, we have a trying low oxalates autism subgroup. So if you want, to join in there, you can, and we can continue these kinds of discussions.
Okay, shall we talk recipes?
Yeah, we've been at it 50 minutes, if you can believe it.
It's hard to imagine how fast the time goes. Yeah.
Oh,
so do you want to go first, Karla?
Sorry, Karla. I'm giving you powers right now.
It's okay.
Here you go.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Everyone see that?
Not yet.
Let's see.
You are a co-host too. Yeah, now we can see it.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I talked about was making something into a cookie that's not necessarily a cookie. So we did, one of the things that I did for Ian was what I called chicken cookies. And, basically took, a gluten-free Bisquick or another all-purpose flour. You can use canned chicken. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be chicken. It can be salmon. If that's the case, it can be turkey. It can be ground pork, ground beef. I've done it with lamb, which was a food that I'm not real fond of, but the son loves. And you add in, some applesauce. You can puree your own food, or you can do a lower to medium oxalate baby food. Throw in some herbs. I did herbs of, I have my own little herbs of Provence blend that I made, but you could use, basically onion and garlic powder, maybe a little bit of curcumin, if you want to give it a little bit more color, an egg, and then just enough water so that you get a dough, but it's not real, you don't want it real sticky. And then what I would do is just take an ice cream scoop and take a regular size one, which is about 2.5, 3 tablespoons, and make a large cookie. And then just, bake it for 15 to 20 minutes and, you're good to go. Let's see, the other thing.
It's almost like it's almost like a well, I'm going to say biscuit, but I don't mean,
Yes.
I mean more like you're having a savory thing in this case, right? You're not
Yes.
having a sweet thing. So
Well, yeah, and you could flatten it out, and you get a little bit of sweet and savory. I mean, you could use applesauce, pear sauce if you want something that's a little more of a, let's say, a complete, meal where you get your protein, you get your, your carbs, you get a fruit, you get a vegetable.
you could even use this to make like a cookie sandwich, right? Like
Yes.
you could take 2 cookies and put something as a filling, right?
In between, yes.
But I'm going to suggest bacon and mayonnaise, given what's in there so far, right?
Yep.
But that's, or maybe some other kind of, cold meat, but it's a cool idea, right? Because then you've got a bread alternative for a portable meal kind of thing for a kid as well, right? You're not just potentially able to have this at home. And again, you're really trying to work in the nutrition here. So yeah, a little bit of cold meat, a little bit of mayonnaise, bingo bango. You've got something that's like for little hands that they can eat too.
Yeah. And the other thing, one of the other things that really worked for us was putting it in an omelet. And
Yeah, I love
he
this idea.
was a big fan of, he loved egg foo young. And we found that we could use, bean sprouts are medium oxalate, but you throw them, depending on the amount you use, but depending on your serving size, it's still doable at under 5 milligram. And again, you can mix it up, instead of, bean sprouts, maybe throw in some cabbage or maybe some shredded zucchini or yellow squash. And again, you can use pork, beef, turkey, whatever kind of protein, that you want. Or if you're vegetarian, eliminate that all together and use some vegetarian alternatives. And then the last thing that I had, and this was a hit, was the red lentil cookies. And again, they don't necessarily have to be red lentils. You could use a smaller amount of brown lentils, which are still medium oxalate, but depending on how many cookies you make, you have something that's fairly low oxalate. You could use chickpeas or, black-eyed peas. We tried pigeon peas. Son didn't really go for that one, too much, too strong of a flavor, but he loved the lentils. You could use the macadamia nut butter, which is pretty low per tablespoon, or you could use sunflower seed butter.
Or you could use that new nut that's on the market, baru nut, and make your own nut butter, and that would be even lower than this. But yeah, this looks like a great recipe, and it's got the, you've got your legume and a nut, so that you're getting all the essential amino acids, plus you've got an egg in there. Yeah,
and you have another vegetable with the riced cauliflower. And the nice thing about cauliflower is it takes on the taste of other foods, especially when it's warm. I would not recommend if you don't like the taste of cauliflower, I wouldn't have it cold, but throw it in a microwave for 10 or 15 seconds and the taste pretty much goes away. I use the riced cauliflower a lot with my husband. I don't have to do this for the son. I do this more for the husband to make sure that he eats a little more balanced. But, you know, you could also use, other things, butternut squash, acorn squash, zucchini, you know, yellow squash. That would, those would actually, zucchini works really well with desserts. So, that's another alternative, and you would still have something that's fairly, fairly low oxalate per serving.
Yeah, it looks great. And all that nice hidden nutrition in there. They don't have to know it's good for them.
No, no, not at all. If I'll be honest, if my husband knew, he would be like, I don't know about this. But what he doesn't know doesn't hurt. And it's only because I love him.
Absolutely. No, for us it was pancakes. So we would do pancakes, just mix them up with whatever was in the fridge. We just whip them up with an egg, put them as a pancake, and those would be ready to go. And they would freeze beautifully.
Yeah.
And I could take them everywhere. So
Yeah.
you just have to be, smart and easygoing about a lot of things. Another one of my big go-tos was guacamole. Of course, I'm Mexican. So instead of chips, I would just have, the sliced red paprikas and things like that, and even cucumbers and whatever, and then they would just scoop it up and eat it like that, and it was a lot of fun.
Bok choy stems are really low. So what we've been doing is use the leaf in the stir fry, but reserve the stem, and they're a great little dipping item.
So I think that's that's the kinds of things that we wanted to share with you. So please give us, some comments in below, and let us know what you think, what you would like to know, what would you like that we talked about. We already have a little bit of a calendar set up until the end of the year. But if there's something like a burning question that you want, that you want us to tackle, please let us know. And then we'll make sure that we can include it either on our question days, or we can just make it, another chapter of these Wizards of Ox life. And I was going to say something else, and this is going to be posted on the Trying Low Oxalates group in probably about an hour, the time that Zoom makes whatever it needs to do. And then it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So if you could please go to the YouTube channel, look for the Wizards of Ox Low Oxalate Experts, and just hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell, so that whenever we post something, you'll get a notification. That will really help us, to get in touch with everybody and really start a communication, what it is that you want to, to learn, or you want to listen from us. We've been at it for a long time. So we could probably give you, a little bit of our experience, and we'll be more than happy to do it.
Yeah, so we weren't really planning for today to speak specifically to keto stuff, but I see we've got a question from Bazia. And so, yeah, we can tackle that. I'm keto. I think Karla is also keto. And so we can talk about what it's like to do low oxalate, and even some of these overlaps, because I stumbled over histamine and salicylate at some point. So we can talk a little bit about, how you handle keto and do it and still enjoy your food.
Yeah. And the last comment before we cut it off is that you have to remember to go low and slow on your low oxalate journey. So don't rush. Remember that you have to go down slowly. Not every recipe on the group is going to be good for you at the beginning. So just make sure that you realize what your level is and start lowering it from there. You do not want to jump here. It's the turtle that wins the race. So with that said, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great week, and we will see you then next Monday talking about endogenous oxalate with Susan Owens, and it's going to be same time, same place. So see you.